The massive ship appeared above New York City on a Tuesday morning in spring. It was so large that it blocked out the sun, casting a shadow over the entire island of Manhattan. People stopped in the streets and looked up. Some screamed. Most just stood there, unable to believe what they were seeing. The Galactic Council had ruled the known universe for 12,000 years. They were made up of 7 ancient species who had long ago decided that they knew what was best for everyone. The Viraxi were insects that stood 8 feet tall and communicated through clicking sounds. The Selenoria were beings made of living crystal who could live for thousands of years. The Delmari came from ocean worlds and breathed through gills. The Cathori had wings and sharp beaks. The Zorith were covered in scales and had teeth like knives. The Mechanids were mushroom-like creatures who shared thoughts through invisible spores. And the Etherians were clouds of gas that could take any shape they wanted. These 7 species had conquered, or controlled, every civilization they had ever found. Some they destroyed. Some they enslaved. Some they simply absorbed into their empire. But all of them, without exception, had submitted to council rule. When their sensors detected radio signals coming from Earth, they sent Ambassador Kellex of the Vraxi to investigate. Kellex was old, even by his species standards. He had overseen the submission of 43 different civilizations. He expected this one to be no different. He was wrong. The Council's message was delivered to the United Nations building 3 days after the ship arrived. Ambassador Kellex walked into the Great Assembly Hall, his forelegs clicking against the marble floor. Behind him floated a silver drone that would translate his words into human language. Secretary General Daniel Price stood at the podium. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had spent his whole life working for peace between nations. Now he faced something that made all of Earth's conflicts seem small and pointless. People of Earth, Kellex began, his voice buzzing like 1,000 bees. The Galactic Council welcomes you to the community of civilized species. You should feel honored. Many worlds are simply destroyed when they are discovered. You have been given a choice. Daniel felt his hands grow cold. What choice? Submission, Kellex said simply. You will disband all military forces. You will surrender all weapons capable of reaching space. You will provide 20% of your planetary resources and 5% of your population as laborers for council projects. In exchange, you will receive protection from external threats and limited access to galactic technology. The assembly hall erupted in angry shouts. Delegates from every nation rose to their feet. Some demanded war. Some demanded negotiation. Some simply looked sick with fear. Daniel raised his hand for silence. It took several minutes, but eventually the room grew quiet. And if we refuse? He asked. Kellex tilted his head, his compound eyes reflecting the lights of the chamber. No species has ever refused. It would be unwise to be the first. Standing behind Daniel was Admiral Patricia Holloway. She was 52 years old and had served in the Navy for 30 years. She had commanded ships in 3 different wars. She had never lost a battle, and she had never in her entire life backed down from a fight. How long do we have to decide? She asked, her voice steady. 60 of your planetary rotations, Kellex replied. After that, our enforcement fleet will arrive to ensure compliance. I suggest you use this time wisely. The ambassador turned and walked out of the hall, his guards following behind him. The silver drone floated after them, leaving nothing but silence in their wake. That night, Daniel called an emergency meeting of every world leader. They gathered in a secure bunker beneath the Swiss Alps, connected by encrypted video links that spanned the globe. For the first time in human history, every nation on Earth was represented in a single conversation. We have 60 days, Daniel said. 60 days to decide the future of our species. The Russian president spoke first. We have nuclear weapons. Thousands of them. Surely we can fight. Admiral Holloway shook her head. I've analyzed their ship. Their technology is thousands of years ahead of ours. Our missiles might as well be rocks and sticks. Then we submit, the French president said quietly. We have no choice. There is always a choice, said Dr. Samuel Green. He was a scientist who had spent his career studying the possibility of alien life. Now that aliens had actually arrived, he found himself wishing he had been wrong. The question is whether we're willing to pay the price. Daniel looked around the room at the faces of the most powerful people on Earth. He saw fear. He saw anger. He saw desperation. But underneath all of that, he saw something else. Something that had driven humanity since the first cave dweller had looked up at the stars and wondered what was out there. He saw defiance. "We are not a species that submits," Daniel said slowly. "We have fought each other for thousands of years. We have survived ice ages and plagues and wars that killed millions. We have split the atom and walked on the moon and sent our voices across the void of space. We did not do these things by giving up. But what can we do?" The Japanese Prime Minister asked, "You said yourself that their technology is far beyond ours." Admiral Holloway stepped forward. "For the past 20 years, in secret, we have been working on something. A project so classified that only a handful of people knew it existed. We called it Project Prometheus." She pressed a button, and a holographic image appeared in the center of the room. It showed a ship unlike anything humanity had ever built. Sleek and powerful, bristling with weapons, it looked like something from a dream of the future. "The ESS Endeavour," Patricia said. "The first true human warship capable of traveling between stars. We've built it using theories that even the Council considers impossible. It's not much against their fleet, but it's a start." The room fell silent as the leader stared at the image. "You want us to fight," the Chinese president said, "against an empire that has ruled for 12,000 years? "I want us to survive," Patricia replied. "On our terms, not theirs." Daniel looked at the faces around him one more time. Then he made the decision that would change human history forever. "Contact Ambassador Kellex," he said. "Tell him we need to meet again. And while we're talking, begin mobilizing every resource we have. Every factory, every laboratory, every soldier. If we're going to fight, we're going to fight together." He paused and took a deep breath. "And God help us all." Above the earth, Ambassador Kellex received the message requesting another meeting. He felt something he had not experienced in centuries. It took him a moment to recognize it. It was doubt. These humans were strange creatures. Their lives were so short, barely a century at most. They should have been terrified. They should have been begging for mercy. Instead, they were asking to talk. Kellex had conquered 43 civilizations. But something told him that this one would be different. He just didn't know. How right he was. The next 60 days were the busiest in human history. Factories that had made cars now made weapons. Scientists who had studied medicine now studied alien biology. Soldiers who had once pointed guns at each other now trained side by side, deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. In a facility that did not officially exist, Dr. Lisa Warren worked without sleep. She was 38 years old, with dark circles under her eyes and coffee stains on her lab coat. She had won 3 awards for her work in physics. None of that mattered now. What mattered was finding a way to hurt the enemy. Her team had recovered pieces of Council technology from the ambassador's shuttle. Small things that the aliens had considered unimportant. A broken communication device. A discarded power cell. A fragment of hull plating. To the Council, these were garbage. To Lisa, they were gold. "Look at this," she said to her colleague, Dr. Anthony Reeves. She held up the power cell under a microscope. "Their energy storage is based on principles we've only theorized about. But they've made mistakes. Their design is inefficient." Anthony frowned. "How can a civilization thousands of years old make mistakes?" "Because they stopped trying to improve," Lisa replied. "They found something that worked, and they never bothered to make it better. We've been doing real physics for less than 500 years, and we've already found 3 ways to make this more efficient." This was the secret that humanity was beginning to understand. The Council species were old, ancient. They had achieved great things millions of years ago. But they had stopped growing. They had become comfortable. They had forgotten what it meant to struggle. Humans had never stopped struggling. Every generation pushed harder than the one before. Every obstacle made them stronger. It was built into their very nature. While Lisa worked on technology, Admiral Patricia Holloway worked on strategy. She had set up a command center in an underground base beneath Colorado. Screens covered every wall, showing the position of every ship and satellite in Earth's orbit. Captain Raymond Ellis stood beside her, studying the displays. He was 45 years old, with a thick beard and hands that had been burned in a shipboard fire 10 years ago. He would command the Endeavor when the fighting started. "We can't win a straight fight," Patricia said. "They have 300 capital ships. Each one is bigger than anything we've ever built." "Then we don't fight straight," Raymond replied. "We fight dirty." Patricia almost smiled. "What do you have in mind?" Raymond pointed to the outer edges of the solar system. "They'll come out of hyperspace here, near Jupiter. That's standard procedure for any fleet approaching an unknown system. They'll want to scan the area before moving in." "So we mine the area," Patricia said, understanding immediately. "Nuclear warheads. Thousands of them. Hidden in the asteroid belt, while they're dealing with that, we hit them from behind with the Endeavor and her sister ships." It was a desperate plan. It would cost many lives, but it was the only chance they had. Across the planet, humanity prepared for war. In Russia, engineers worked around the clock to build more ships. In China, factories produced missiles by the thousands. In America, soldiers trained in zero-gravity combat. In India, programmers wrote code for defense systems that had never been tested. And in small towns and big cities, ordinary people did whatever they could. They donated blood. They worked extra shifts. They prayed to whatever gods they believed in. They knew that the coming battle would decide the fate of their children and their children's children. Commander Nicole Bennett was Raymond's second-in-command on the Endeavor. She was 32 years old and had been an astronaut before the crisis began. She had dreamed of exploring the stars since she was a little girl. She had never imagined she would be fighting a war in them. "Captain," she said as she entered the bridge of the Endeavor, "all systems are online." "The crew is ready," Raymond nodded. The ship hummed with power around them. 2,000 men and women served aboard the Endeavor. Each one had volunteered, knowing that they might not survive what was coming. "Have you told your family?" Raymond asked quietly. Nicole shook her head. "They think I'm on a training mission. It's easier that way. Easier for them, or easier for you?" She didn't answer. She didn't need to. On the other side of the world, Ambassador Kellex was growing concerned. He had expected the humans to beg for mercy. Instead, they were stalling. Every meeting led to more questions. Every demand led to negotiations. They were buying time, and he knew it. "We should not wait for the fleet," his aide suggested. "We should destroy their major cities now. Show them what defiance costs." Kellex considered it. A single ship could easily devastate a dozen cities. It would certainly speed up the surrender, but something held him back. He had watched the humans during their negotiations. He had seen how they looked at each other. There was no fear in their eyes. There was determination. There was hope. There was something he had not seen in thousands of years of dealing with conquered species. There was unity. "No," he said finally. "We will wait for the fleet. I want to see what these creatures are truly capable of." It was a decision he would regret as the 60th day approached. Secretary General Daniel Price addressed the people of Earth one final time. Every screen on the planet showed his face. Every speaker carried his voice. "Tomorrow, the Council fleet will arrive," he said. "They expect us to surrender. They expect us to kneel. They have never faced a species like us." He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was stronger. "For thousands of years, we have fought each other. We have divided ourselves by nation and race and religion. Today, those divisions end. Today, we are not American or Chinese or Russian or Indian. Today, we are human, and we will show the galaxy what that means." In the bunker beneath Colorado, Patricia watched the speech with her officers. When it ended, she turned to face them. "You heard the man," she said. "Let's get to work." In orbit around Earth, the Endeavor and her sister ships powered up their engines. Raymond Ellis sat in his command chair and looked at the stars through the view screen. Somewhere out there, an enemy fleet was coming to enslave his world. He thought about his wife and his, too. Daughters back in Ohio. He thought about the house where he had grown up and the school where he had learned to read. He thought about everything he had ever loved. "All hands," he said over the intercom. "This is the captain. In a few hours, we will face the greatest battle in human history. Some of us will not survive, but what we do here will be remembered forever. Our children will tell stories about this day. Our grandchildren will learn about it in school. And 1,000 years from now, when humanity spreads across the stars, they will look back and know that this is where it all began." He took a deep breath. "Man your stations, and may God have mercy on our enemies. Because we won't." The countdown to battle had begun. The Council fleet came out of hyperspace like a swarm of angry hornets. 300 capital ships, each one the size of a small city. Behind them came thousands of smaller vessels, support ships and troop carriers and medical frigates. It was the largest military force the galaxy had seen in centuries. Fleet Commander Xeraxis of the Zorath stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion. He was old even by his species standards. His scales faded to a dull gray. He had commanded fleets in 11 different campaigns. He had never lost. "Begin scanning," he ordered. "I want to know everything about their defenses." His tactical officer worked the controls. A moment later, the screen lit up with data. "Commander, I'm detecting thousands of small objects in the asteroid belt. They appear to be weapons platforms of some kind." Xeraxis snorted. "Primitive. Send the forward scouts to clear them out." 50 light cruisers broke formation and moved toward the asteroid belt. They were fast and well-armed, each one crewed by seasoned veterans. Against human technology, they should have been invincible. The first nuclear warhead detonated when the cruisers were still 1,000 kilometers from the belt. Then another. Then 100 more. On the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, Xeraxis watched in disbelief as his forward scouts vanished in balls of fire. The explosions were so bright that the view screen had to dim itself to protect the crew's eyes. "Possible," he hissed. "These primitives should not have this capability." "Commander, we've lost contact with all forward scouts," the tactical officer reported. His voice was shaking. "The asteroid belt is completely mined. We cannot approach without suffering massive casualties." Xeraxis slammed his clawed fist against his chair. "Then we go around. All ships adjust course. We will approach Earth from the polar regions." It was exactly what Patricia had expected, in the command center beneath Colorado. She watched the enemy fleet change course. The aliens were predictable. They had been fighting the same way for thousands of years. "They had forgotten how to adapt," signaled the Endeavor, she said. "Tell Captain Ellis to begin Phase 2. Deep in the shadow of Jupiter's largest moon, the Endeavor waited with her sister ships. There were only 12 of them, tiny compared to the enemy fleet, but they carried weapons that the Council had never seen. Raymond Ellis received the signal and smiled grimly. "All ships, this is the captain. Time to introduce ourselves." The human ships burst from their hiding place at speeds the Council thought impossible. Their engines burned with a blue fire that left trails of light across the darkness of space. They hit the rear of the enemy fleet like a knife through paper. The first Council ship to die was a heavy cruiser called the Voice of Authority. One moment it was maintaining formation. The next moment it was a cloud of expanding debris. The Endeavor's main gun, a weapon Lisa Warren had designed in her underground laboratory, had punched straight through its shields. "Target destroyed," Nicole reported from her station. "Moving to next target." "All batteries, continue firing," Raymond ordered. "Don't give them time to recover." The battle quickly became chaos. Council ships tried to turn and face the human attackers, but the human vessels were faster and more agile. They darted between the larger ships, firing constantly, never staying still long enough to be targeted. Xeraxis roared with frustration. "How are they doing this? Their technology should be centuries behind ours." "Their ships appear to use a different propulsion system," his science officer reported. "It's more efficient than anything in our records. And their weapons are penetrating our shields with ease." "That's impossible. Our shields have protected us for 10,000 years." "Perhaps that is the problem, Commander. Our shields have not been improved in 10,000 years." The battle raged for hours. Human ships fell, but for every human vessel destroyed, 3 Council ships died. The Endeavor alone destroyed 27 enemy ships before taking serious damage. On Earth, people watched the battle through telescopes and satellites. They saw the flashes of light as ships exploded. They saw the trails of missiles and the beams of energy weapons, and they prayed. In a small town in Kansas, a woman named Mary Ellis sat with her 2 daughters and watched the sky. She knew that her husband was up there somewhere, fighting for their lives. She had not slept in 3 days. "Is Daddy going to be okay?" her youngest daughter asked. Mary held her tightly. "Your daddy is the bravest man I've ever known. He's going to be fine." She didn't know if she believed it, but she had to say it anyway. In space, the Endeavor was dying. 3 direct hits had crippled her main engines. Fires burned on multiple decks. Half her crew was dead or wounded. Raymond sat in his command chair, blood running down his face from a cut on his forehead. The bridge around him was filled with smoke and the sound of alarms. "Captain, we've lost primary weapons," Nicole reported. Her arm was broken, but she was still at her station. "Shields are down to 12%. We can't take much more." Raymond looked at the view screen. The enemy flagship was directly ahead, its weapons charging for a killing blow. "Then we don't take any more," he said quietly. "All hands, abandon ship. I'm going to ram them." Nicole stared at him. "Captain, you can't." "Can and I will. Get to the escape pods." "That's an order." The crew hesitated. They had served under Raymond for years. He was more than their captain. He was their friend, Go Raymond said, more gently this time. "Someone has to survive to tell the story." One by one, they left. Nicole was the last to go. She looked back at him from the doorway. "It's been an honor, Captain. The honor was mine. Now go." Alone on the bridge, Raymond pointed the Endeavor at the Eternal Dominion and pushed the engines to maximum. The ship groaned around him, metal screaming under the strain. On the enemy flagship, Zaraxis saw what was happening. "Evasive maneuvers," he shouted. "Get us out of here. It's too late." The Endeavor hit the Eternal Dominion at nearly the speed of light. The explosion was so bright it could be seen from Earth. When the light faded, both ships were gone. The Council had lost its flagship and its fleet commander. The human fleet had lost its greatest warrior. "All ships fall back to Luna." Patricia's voice crackled over the communication system. "We've bought ourselves time. Now we use it." The surviving human ships retreated, leaving behind a field of debris that had once been the mightiest fleet in the galaxy. They had lost 60% of their forces. They had lost the Endeavor. They had lost Captain Raymond Ellis. But they had one. On Earth, people wept with relief and grief. They had survived the first battle. But everyone knew the war was far from over. In the command center, Patricia stood before her officers. Her face was drawn with exhaustion and sorrow. "Raymond Ellis gave his life for us today," she said. "We will not waste his sacrifice. The Council will send another fleet. When they do, we'll be ready." She straightened her shoulders and lifted her chin. This war has just begun. News of the defeat spread across the galaxy like wildfire. For the first time in 12,000 years, the Council had lost a major battle. For the first time in living memory, someone had fought back and won, in the great chamber of the Council homeworld, a massive space station that orbited a dying star. The 7 elder species gathered in emergency session. High Arbiter Villanis stood at the center, his insectoid body trembling with barely controlled rage. "This is unacceptable," he declared. "These humans have made fools of us. They must be destroyed utterly. No survivors. No mercy." Ambassador Kellic stepped forward. He had been recalled from Earth after the battle, his diplomatic mission a complete failure. But his time among the humans had changed him in ways he was still trying to understand. "Perhaps we should reconsider our approach," he suggested carefully. "These beings are unlike any we have encountered. They adapt faster than any species in our records. If we simply destroy them, we may be making a grave mistake." "What mistake?" growled General Morthax of the Zorath, who had taken command of military operations after Xerax's death. "They are primitives. We outnumber them 1,000 to 1. We will crush them like insects." "That is what Xeraxis said," Kellex replied. And now Xeraxis is dead. The chamber fell silent. No one wanted to admit it, but Kellex had made a point. The humans had done something that should have been impossible. They had taken Council technology, improved it, and used it against its creators. On Earth, Dr. Lisa Warren was making discoveries that would change everything. She had been studying the wreckage of Council ships recovered from the battle, and what she found shocked her to her core. "Look at this," she said to Daniel Price, who had come to inspect her laboratory. She pointed to a holographic display showing the internal structure of a Council engine. "This design is at least 3,000 years old, maybe older. They haven't changed it at all. Why would they?" Daniel asked. "If it works, why fix it?" "Because it doesn't work as well as it could," Lisa replied. "We've been studying physics for less than 500 years. We've already found ways to make their technology 50% more efficient. They could have done this themselves centuries ago. But they didn't." She pulled up another display, this one showing Council records they had captured from the destroyed ships. It gets worse. Every major advancement in Council technology didn't come from their own research. It came from species they conquered. They steal innovations from younger civilizations and then suppress those civilizations so they can never become a threat. Right. Daniel felt cold. "You're saying the Council has been holding the galaxy back on purpose, or just holding it back?" "They've been actively preventing progress. Any species that shows potential is either destroyed or enslaved before they can develop. We're the first ones to get far enough to actually fight back." This information was shared with humanity's leaders within hours. It changed everything. They were not just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting for every species the Council had ever oppressed. "We need to spread this information," Patricia said during an emergency meeting. "Every species under Council rule needs to know the truth." "How?" asked Admiral Stephen Clark, who had taken over command of the fleet after Raymond's death. "Our communications can't reach that far." "But theirs can," Lisa said with a thin smile. "We captured their communication equipment. I can modify it to broadcast on every frequency the Council uses. Every ship, every station, every colony will hear our message." It took 2 weeks to prepare the broadcast. During that time, the Council assembled a new fleet, larger than the first. They were taking no chances this time. 500 capital ships, supported by tens of thousands of smaller vessels. Enough firepower to destroy Earth 100 times over. But humanity was not idle either. New ships rolled off the production lines daily. Dr. Warren's improvements had been shared with every factory on Earth. The new vessels were faster, stronger, and more deadly than anything the Council had ever seen, and in secret. Humanity's allies were growing. Ambassador Kellex had returned to the Council homeworld, but his loyalty had shifted. He had seen something in the humans that he had long forgotten existed in the galaxy. Hope, determination, the will to fight for something greater than yourself. He began reaching out to others who felt the same way. The Maconids had always resented their status as second-class citizens of the Council. The Etherians had ancient philosophies that spoke against tyranny and oppression. Even some of the Vraxi, Kellex's own species, were tired of being the Council's enforcers. "The humans are going to broadcast a message," Kellex told them in a secret meeting. "When they do, everything will change. We must be ready to act." The day of the broadcast arrived. Lisa Warren stood in her laboratory, surrounded by captured alien technology. Daniel Price stood beside her, along with Patricia and Admiral Clark. "Are you sure this will work?" Daniel asked. "No," Lisa admitted. "But it's our best chance. If we can convince even a fraction of the Council's subjects to question their masters, it will make a difference." She activated the equipment. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the screens lit up with confirmation signals from across the galaxy. "This is Dr. Lisa Warren of the planet Earth," she said into the microphone. "I am speaking to all species under Galactic Council rule. What you are about to hear will change everything you believe about your government." Out. She laid out the evidence. The stolen technologies. The suppressed innovations. The countless species that had been destroyed to prevent them from becoming rivals. She spoke for an hour, providing data and records that could not be disputed. "The Council fears progress, she concluded. They fear change. They fear anyone who might challenge their power. But fear is not the same as strength, and the galaxy is waking up. The response was immediate. On a dozen worlds, uprisings began. Myconid colonies declared independence. Etherian philosophers published statements condemning the council. Even some Varaxi ships refused to follow orders. In the council chamber, High Arbiter Valanus watched his empire begin to crumble. "Destroy the human transmission equipment," he ordered. "Silence them permanently." "Cannot," his aide reported. "They are using our own technology. If we disable it, we disable our entire communication network." For the first time in his long life, Valanus felt something he had never experienced before. He felt afraid. On Earth, humanity watched the news of galactic rebellion with hope and determination. They knew the Council would strike back harder than ever. They knew many more would die before this war was over, but they also knew something else. They were no longer alone. "The next fleet will be here in 30 days, Patricia announced to her officers. "This time we won't just be defending. We'll be attacking." Admiral Clark pulled up a tactical display showing the Council homeworld. "Our new ships can reach it in 6 weeks," he said. "If we hit them at home while their fleet is away, we can end this war in one stroke." Daniel nodded slowly. "Do it. It's time to take the fight to them." The message went out to humanity's new allies across the galaxy. The time for hiding was over. The time for liberation had begun. 1 year had passed since the first Council ship appeared above New York City. 1 year of war, of sacrifice, of blood and fire and desperate hope. 1 year that had changed the galaxy forever. The human fleet gathered at the edge of the solar system. But it was no longer just a human fleet. Ships from a dozen species flew alongside the vessels built on Earth. Myconid cruisers with their strange organic hulls. Etherian carriers that seemed to shimmer like clouds of light. Even a handful of Varaxi destroyers crewed by rebels who had turned against their own government. Admiral Stephen Clark stood on the bridge of the ESS Victory, the new flagship of the combined fleet. The ship had been named in honor of Raymond Ellis and all those who had died in the first battle. It was twice as large as the Endeavor and carried weapons that would have seemed like magic to the humans of just 2 years ago. "All ships report ready," Commander Nicole Bennett said from her station. She had recovered from her injuries and been promoted to First Officer of the Victory. She carried the memory of Raymond Ellis with her every day, a reminder of what they were fighting for. "Signal from Earth," the communications officer reported. "Secretary General Price wishes to speak with you." Daniel's face appeared on the screen. He looked older than he had a year ago, his hair completely gray now. The weight of leading humanity through its greatest crisis had taken its toll. "Admiral," he said, "the Council's second fleet has bypassed our defenses and is heading for Earth. They'll arrive in approximately 6 hours." Clark nodded. He had expected this. "We'll be at the Council homeworld in 4 hours. If we can take out their seat of power, the fleet will have nothing to come home to. Good luck, Stephen. The hopes of the entire galaxy go with you." The screen went dark. Clark turned to face his bridge crew. "You heard the man? Set course for the Council homeworld. Maximum speed." The fleet jumped to hyperspace, leaving trails of light that stretched across the stars. 4 hours later, they emerged in the heart of Council space. Before them hung the massive station that had served as the seat of galactic power for 12,000 years. It was enormous, larger than some moons, bristling with weapons and defense systems, but it was not prepared for what was coming. "All ships begin attack run," Clark ordered. "Focus fire on the weapon platforms. Clear a path to the central hub." The battle began in a storm of energy beams and missiles. Council defense ships swarmed out to meet the attackers, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. The combined fleet cut through them like a blade through wheat. On the bridge of the Victory, Clark watched the tactical display with grim satisfaction. They were winning, but the cost was high. Ships winked out of existence with every passing minute, their crews dying in the cold vacuum of space. "Admiral, we've cleared a path to the main docking bay," Nicole reported. "Boarding parties are ready. Launch them." and signaled Captain Warren to begin her assault on the communication hub. Lisa Warren had left her laboratory to lead a special team of scientists and soldiers. Their mission was to capture the Council's central communication array and broadcast one final message to the galaxy. Her shuttle landed in a hail of gunfire. Council guards swarmed toward them, but the human soldiers pushed them back with weapons that the guards had never seen before. "Move forward," Lisa shouted over the chaos. "We need to reach the array." They fought their way through corridors that seemed to go on forever. Alien architecture surrounded them, beautiful and strange and utterly inhuman. But Lisa had no time to admire it. Every second counted. Finally, they reached the communication hub. It was a vast chamber filled with glowing screens and humming machinery. In the center stood a control console that could reach every corner of the galaxy. Lisa pushed past the bodies of fallen guards and began working the controls. Her fingers flew across alien keyboards, entering commands she had memorized from captured equipment. "This is Dr. Lisa Warren," she said into the microphone. "Broadcasting to all species, everywhere. The Council homeworld has fallen. The war is over. You are free. Across the galaxy, beings of every shape and size heard her words. On occupied worlds, soldiers threw down their weapons. On Council ships, crews refused to follow orders. On 1,000 different planets, people looked up at the sky and dared to hope for the first time in their lives in the great chamber at the heart of the station. High Arbiter Valanus stood alone. His guards had fled. His allies had abandoned him. Everything he had built over centuries of careful manipulation was crumbling to dust. The doors burst open, and Patricia Holloway walked in. She was not wearing a uniform. She carried no weapon. She simply walked across the floor and stood before the being who had tried to enslave her world. "It's over," she said. Valanis looked at her with eyes that had seen the rise and fall of countless civilizations. "You will take our place," he said. "You will become the new tyrants. It is the natural order." Patricia shook her head. "That's where you never understood us. We don't want to rule. We just want to be free. And we want everyone else to be free too. Possible. Someone must maintain order. Someone must be in control." "No," Patricia replied. "Someone must serve, and that's what we intend to do." She turned and walked away, leaving Valanis alone with the ruins of his empire. 6 months later, the Galactic Federation held its first assembly. Every species, regardless of age or technology, had an equal voice. Human ambassadors sat beside Myconids and Etherians and reformed Vraxi. They debated and argued and compromised, just as humans had done for thousands of years. Dr. Lisa Warren received the first Galactic Prize for Scientific Achievement. She used her speech to call for open sharing of knowledge between all species, so that no one would ever again be held back by fear. Admiral Stephen Clark retired from military service to become the first director of the Federation Academy, where beings from across the galaxy learned to work together in peace. Commander Nicole Bennett took command of the Victory and led the Federation's new exploration fleet. She carried Raymond Ellis's lucky coin with her on every mission, a reminder of the man who had given everything for the future and on Earth. Daniel Price addressed a crowd of millions gathered in New York City. Humans and aliens stood side by side, looking up at a leader who had guided them through the darkest chapter in their history. "They came to conquer us," Daniel said, his voice carrying across the world. "They expected us to kneel. They thought our short lives made us weak. But they were wrong." He paused, looking out at the faces before him. Human and alien, young and old, united as never before. "Our lives are short," he continued. "That is true. But that is also our strength. We do not have time to be afraid. We do not have time to give up. Every generation must fight for the future, because we know we will not live to see all of it. And that makes us stronger than any species that lives for thousands of years." He smiled, and there were tears in his eyes. The Council ruled for 12,000 years. They thought they would rule forever. But forever is a long time, and we are very patient. Above the crowd, ships from 100 different species flew in formation. a symbol of what the galaxy could achieve when fear gave way to hope. The Council had ordered Earth's submission. What came next did not just terrify them, it transformed the galaxy, and humanity stood at the center of it all. Not as conquerors, but as partners. Not as rulers, but as friends. The stars belonged to everyone now, and that was exactly how it should be, in a small town in Kansas. Mary Ellis stood with her daughters and watched the celebration on their view screen. A year ago, she had lost her husband. Today, she watched the world he had died to protect flourish in ways she had never imagined. "Mommy," her youngest daughter asked, "is Daddy watching too?" Mary pulled her close and looked up at the stars. "Sweetheart," she said, "I think he is. Somewhere out there, among the endless stars, perhaps he was." The end.